Welcome everyone to Bible study. Let's start with the word of prayer because I need one. Lord, we pray that you would just be with us now as we gather together, that you would slow us down. Help us to listen for your word. Help us to gain wisdom as your people. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So we'll try to finish up the first 9 chapters. Today we're on chapter 5, because those are really one piece. And then after my sabbatical, we'll come back and pick it up at chapter 10. So what we've been kind of hearing so far is the Proverbs are part of wisdom literature in the Old Testament. Wisdom literature has to do with looking into our daily world and seeing the presence of God. How do we discern God's presence in the everyday things of life? And the very first verses in Proverbs remind us that wisdom begins with fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So that really all wisdom flows from our relationship with God. That's really where wisdom comes from. And that we really can't find wisdom apart from that relationship.
What about that word fear?
Fear?
Is that fear like we fear rattlesnakes?
No. Fear means, and we did talk about this the first time too.
Bees.
Commitment.
Okay.
Even more awe, kind of a
Got it.
deep respect for God. Kind of like you fear the king. You know, the king can do really good things for you. You know, also that the king has the power over life and death. And so, you know, you have deep respect for the powers of the king because the king can do all those amazing things. We got into, as we moved through Proverbs, some of the things that go with wisdom, and most of them are tied to the fact that as God is, so we as God's followers are called to be. So if God is a God of mercy and compassion and love and kindness, then that's what we ought to be as well. Our people of mercy and love and kindness and compassion. And so now we pick up a kind of continuing sort of theme here in the book of Proverbs. I'm interested in what you think about why this is such an important theme, because I'm not always sure why I think it's an important theme, but it starts at verse in chapter 5. It says, "My son, attend to my wisdom and listen to my good counsel, so that you may observe proper prudence and your speech be informed with knowledge. For though the lips of an adulteress drip honey and her tongue is smoother than oil, yet in the end she is more bitter than wormwood and sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go downward on the path to death. Her course is set for Sheol. She does not watch for the road that leads to life. Her course turns this way and that, and what does she care? Now, my son, listen to me. Do not ignore what I say. Keep well away from her, and do not go near the door of her house, or you will lose your dignity in the eyes of others and your honor before strangers. Strangers will batten on your wealth, and your hard-won gains pass to another man's family. The end will be that you will starve. You will shrink to mere skin and bones. Then you will say, why did I hate correction and set my heart against reproof? I did not listen to the voices of my teachers or pay attention to my masters. I soon earned a bad name and was despised in the public assembly. Drink water from your own cistern and running water from your own spring. Do not let your well overflow into the road, your runnels of water pour into the street. Let them be yours alone, not shared with strangers. Let your fountain, the wife of your youth, be blessed. Rejoice in her, a lovely doe, a graceful hind. Let her be your companion. You will at all times be bathed in her love, and her love will continually wrap you round. Wherever you turn, she will guide you. When you lie in bed, she will watch over you, and when you wake, she will talk with you. Why, my son, are you wrapped up in the love of an adulteress? Why do you embrace a loose woman? For man's ways are always in the Lord's sight, who watches for every path that he must take. The wicked man is caught in his own iniquities and held fast in the toil of his own sin. He will perish for want of discipline, wrapped in the shroud of his boundless folly. So what are we talking about?
Is he actually talking about a woman?
In this particular case, yes. In other places, we have wisdom personified as a woman, but this is actually a woman,
A loose woman?
a loose woman, and a potentially loose man as well. So, and he'll come back to this like tons and tons of time. Why is this such a
Because this is part of, this is the life, and there's it's sin across the table.
Mhm,
And it's so easy to go to it
mhm.
than it is to not.
Okay. So the temptation's always there, and there's kind
Yeah.
of this, okay, you could always get involved in this. But why is, you could say lots of things about murder or robbery or.
But it's about relationships.
Okay. Ultimately, we've been talking a lot about that Proverbs is about relationships. And so relationships run really high on the concepts of what are important. And among the most important within the Israelite culture is the relationship of marriage. Yep.
Yeah.
Man and wife.
Family.
It ends in
Family.
Chapter 30.
Yeah, the very last chapter of Proverbs will talk about how important all of, the relationships we have are.
Yeah.
But here, we get into one of the most foolish things you can do is play fast and loose with what is in many ways within this culture, the most important relationship of all, which is marriage. This is where family arises. This is where generations are passed from one to the other. It makes a total mess of society when somehow we don't honor this relationship as among the most important. And there's also another reason why why else would it be so important to talk about this?
This is the vow that the husband and wife took.
Okay, there's a vow.
There's
That's-
love.
There's love. Also, what image does the Bible often use for God and God's people?
Father.
Father,
Children.
sometimes children, and a man and a man's bride. So if God's relationship is one of faithfulness and truth and constant care, then ours needs to be that too.
Beloved community.
The beloved community starts with your family and living that reality out in the family that you have. But why do people, and this is one I haven't even thought about, so I'm going to give you a shot at it. Why is this one of the places where people are so prone to veer away from the wisdom of God?
Yes.
Okay, lust. Are we that bad at dealing with?
Selfishness.
Selfishness.
This one is an easy peasy one. Like if you go murder somebody, that takes quite an effort. This one is you just wink, wink, and away you go.
And away you go. It's way too easy in
Yeah.
the world to have this happen.
Sometimes law.
Law, love, okay. There's a lot of powerful imagery in this chapter that our relationship in marriage, and I would extend it probably to our relationships in general, are important life-giving realities. And when we botch those up, when we turn our backs on them, then we really give up a lot of the ability we have to draw life from God and from the universe around us. There's this whole strange imagery, drink water from your own cistern and running water from your own spring. So there's life.
Faithful.
Yeah, well, and it also talks about this is life. this spring that you commit to as a family is what gives you life. You know, you don't have water in ancient Israel, then you don't live very long. Do not let your well overflow into the road. Don't waste it. Don't let it, you know, because then it becomes useless in that way. You run all of water pour into the street. Let them be yours alone, not shared with strangers. Water was a kind of precious commodity. You kind of hung on to that. Let your fountain, the wife of your youth, be blessed. Rejoice in her. And it gives us this kind of beautiful imagery of wherever you are, whatever place you are in your relationship, see the loveliness of your wife. Understand the. Now, if I was writing this today, I would also be including the opposite reality as well, that wives should also be equally aware of the beauty and the life-givingness of their relationship with their husbands. But this is a matriarchal society. And so, and women, you know, if you're a man and you commit adultery, bad things can happen to you in the community. Your respect decreases. You might have people not want to trade with you or forever. But if you're a woman and you commit adultery, what happens? You're stoned to death. So the consequences are slightly higher for women. So there's not as great a likelihood as of their being the ones who are, you know, the ones forming these kind of relationships, because there's a lot that goes with that. But guys, it's kind of easy. So there's kind of a sort of, well, let's especially pay attention to you. You know, there's not the threats that go with it that are on the other side. And, you know, again, I'm a little more uncomfortable with the understandings of that time, but it was the understanding of that time that men were the responsible ones. You need to be the responsible ones about this. In fact, some of the imagery in this passage, I kind of read it and go, you know, that the woman is the temptress. The one who's sweet as honey. She's a, you know, and, you know, it's like, oh, yuck. The sword cuts both ways. But you have to understand the times these come out of. So as we move into chapter 6, then we get some kind of miscellaneous sorts of advice that are being passed around. We'll look at 1 through 19 first. My son, if you pledge yourself to another man and stand surety for a stranger, if you are caught by your promise, trapped by some promise you have made, do what I now tell you and save yourself, my son. When you fall into another man's power, bestir yourself, go and pester the man. Give yourself no rest, allow yourself no sleep. Save yourself like a gazelle from the toils, like a bird from the grasp of the fowler. Go to the ant, you sluggard, watch her ways and get wisdom. She has no overseer, nor governor or ruler, but in summer she prepares her store of food and lays in her supplies at harvest. How long, you sluggard, will you lie abed? Will you rouse yourself from sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands and rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, want like a ruffian. A scoundrel, a mischievous man is he who prowls about with crooked talk, a wink of the eye, a touch with the foot, a sign with the fingers. Subversion is the evil that he is plotting. He stirs up quarrels all the time. Down comes disaster suddenly upon him. Suddenly he's broken beyond all remedy. 6 things the Lord hates. 7 things are detestable to him. A proud eye, a false tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that forges thoughts of mischief, and feet that wend swiftly to do evil, a false witness telling a pack of lies, and one who stirs up quarrels between brothers. So what about this wisdom? What do you think of what's being said here?
Just the basics of living. You know, don't lie, don't cheat, don't hurt somebody else, don't with your words. And it isn't, and it's easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make promises you can't keep.
Think before you act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's shifted to he,
Mhm.
instead of she being wisdom.
Well, it's, again, we're not here talking about wisdom personified. This is not a section where that's true. He is there, he's kind of pointing out that, again, the dialogue is between, primarily as it's set up in the book, between a father, son.
Mhm.
And he's saying that, you could grow up to be like this man, and this man is one you don't want to be with, like one who's mischievous, who prowls about with crooked talk, who tries to swindle everybody he comes into contact with. Don't do that. Don't be that kind of guy. Don't be that guy. Because
They're kind of like choosing your friends.
there's an element of that as well. Don't hang around with people who do these. And though that's more kind of the focus of some of the earlier chapters, there would be an element of that in that too. Not only don't be like this guy, but don't hang around with these kind of guys either, because they're just going to get you into trouble if you do that. But what do you think about the place? This just speaks to me really powerfully, because this is what I was taught from when I was little. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't do these things that you're not supposed to do. Definitely don't shed innocent blood. Don't go around trying to cause trouble wherever you go. That's not what we're supposed to do. The part that sometimes I struggle with is down comes disaster suddenly upon him. Suddenly he is broken beyond all remedy. So there's this understanding within the book of Proverbs and a lot of the Old Testament. The people who do these things will eventually get caught out. And sometimes that's true. Was it Bernie Madoff who eventually got caught, sent to prison? But he got an awful lot out of that. And even going to prison, he somehow managed to hang on to a lot of his ill-gotten gains. So I'm not, the understanding that somehow you're going to eventually be caught out in all this. Sometimes I have to wonder, it seems like. But again, I think as a person who reads this as in faith, it's not even that fear of getting caught. That's the main motivation. The main motivation for me is that the Lord hates these things. The Lord hates it when we're mischievous and false-tongued and murderous and greedy and all these things. These are the things that God wants us not to do.
What about that example where he actually uses one with the neighbor and he guarantees either protection or backing? And if he wants out of it, I don't quite understand that.
Okay, what do we make that? That's back in verses 1 through 5.
Right, and mine would be 3.
Yeah.
3 to
So
5.
you agree to be surety for your neighbor. So he's trying to make a deal, but he doesn't have quite the collateral or whatever. And you say, okay, I'll guarantee the loan if he defaults on it. And you realize suddenly, whoops, this wasn't such a good idea. Then what's the advice?
Me.
Go and pester this guy until he lets you off the hook. Don't just take it. Don't wait for him to put you in the hole. Instead, go and say, hey, wait a minute. I guaranteed you, but I know now that you're not going to follow through on this. You get me out of this, or I'll make your life miserable forever, kind of.
Now, he uses that example several times about Proverbs, and you'll wonder. It didn't sound like he really thought that you should really help your neighbor out that much.
Certainly, I think Proverbs has an idea that you need to be careful about it. Because in other places, Proverbs also talks about being kind to your neighbor, being helpful, caring for their, so there's that side. It's again that balance we find in the Old Testament of this, but that. Be caring for your neighbor, but also be careful a little bit about what's going on. And the overall thing I get out of this particular chapter that's interesting is that you're always supposed to not take things lying down. You're always supposed to be active. You're always supposed to be making things happen for yourself. So right after it, we get the little kind of image of don't be like a sluggard, go and be like the ant. Look, the ant's always climbing around looking for, food and getting things done. Though, again, it's interesting. They have the gender wrong here about ants, because who goes and does all the work for the ant colony?
The workers.
Who are?
Female.
No, they're not.
Yeah, but consider her ways.
Yeah, I know, but that's the image. But scientifically, we know now
Oh, well.
that the ones who go out are the men, and you have the females are back there because they're kind of the center of the
But
colony.
don't forget, they didn't know that. back
Yeah,
then.
they didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it reveals their prejudice, which is the leaders are the men. And yeah, I mean, I'm just again pointing out that sometimes we have to be aware that, we're talking about a very patriarchal, male-centered society. And I think it's unfortunate that some people take that reality, which is in the Old Testament, and then transfer it into our modern time and say, that's how we're supposed to be too.
Right.
And
that gets to be a problem.
Yep, it does.
Mhm.
And that's why I think we need to really be aware of those things and cautious about that reality when we're looking at the text. It's interesting then to go on to the next part, because we return to the theme of chapter 5.
Back to the family.
My son, observe your father's commands and do not reject the teachings of your mother. Remember, before it was the teachings of your father, and now your mother's teaching you this as well. Wear them always next to your heart and bind them close about your neck. For a command is a lamp and a teaching, a light. Reproof and correction point the way of life. To keep you from the wife of another man, from the seductive tongue of the loose woman. Do not desire her beauty in your heart, or let your glance provoke you. For a prostitute can be had for the price of a loaf, but a married woman is out for bigger game. Can a man kindle fire in his bosom without burning his clothes? If a man walks on hot coals, will his feet not be scorched? So is he who sleeps with his neighbor's wife. No one can touch such a woman and go free. If not a thief contemptible when he steals to is not a thief contemptible when he steals to satisfy his appetite, even if he is hungry? And if he is caught, must he not pay 7 times over and surrender all that his house contains? So one who commits adultery is a senseless fool. He dishonors the woman and ruins himself. He will get nothing but blows and contumely, and will never live down the disgrace. For a husband's anger is a jealous anger, and in the day of vengeance he will show no mercy. Compensation will not buy his forgiveness. No bribe, however large, will purchase his connivance. Whatever that means. Weird translation in the NIV. So there we are, back to the same theme.
Adultery.
Adultery.
The end of it, more in the end of in the 30s here.
Mhm.
Is that saying that the man won't forgive his wife if his neighbor takes his wife?
Won't forgive either one, in essence. I mean, again, we have to remember that the wisdom is coming to the son, who is the one who's receiving it. So when it says you will not be forgiven, it must be especially directed at male person who's part of the. But the truth is, a husband's not very likely to forgive either one if this goes on. The wife, though, there's a direct way the husband can deal with the wife, which is divorce or stoning, take your pick. But the man, all he can do is maybe go and beat him up or wreck his reputation, or, you know.
Oh, he's destroyed himself.
Yeah.
already.
Yeah. But you can be sure that, you know, this seems to say, you can be sure the husband is not going to let you off easy. And nothing you can do is going to spare you from the anger that's to come. You can say you're sorry all you want, but that's probably not going to get you very far.
He shows no restraint when he
Nope.
takes revenge.
And probably there's not, you know, there's probably not going to be many people in the community that are going to back you up either. They're going to say, hey, you know, he has every right to go ahead and take whatever revenge he wants on you. So again, we have this important, these relationships are something to take very seriously within the understanding of the Hebrew people. And it's so important that it even goes on to chapter 7. Where we go, my son, keep my words, store my commands in your mind, keep my commands if you would live, and treasure my teachings as the apple of your eye. Wear them like a ring on your finger, write them on the tablet of your memory. Call wisdom your sister, great understanding as a familiar friend. Then they will save you from the adulteress, from the loose woman with her seductive words. I glanced out of the window of my house. I looked down through the lattice, and I saw among simple youths, there amongst the boys, I noticed a lad, a foolish lad, passing along the street at the corner, stepping out in the direction of her house at twilight as the day faded, at dusk as the night grew dark. Suddenly a woman came to meet him, dressed like a prostitute, full of wiles, flighty and inconstant, a woman never content to stay at home, lying in wait at every corner. Now in the streets, now in the public square, she caught hold of him and kissed him. Brazenly, she accosted him and said, I had a sacrifice, an offering to make, and I have paid my vows today. That's why I have come out to meet you, to watch for you and find you. I have spread coverings on my bed of colored linen from Egypt. I have sprinkled my bed with myrrh, my clothes with aloes and cassia. Come, let us drown ourselves in pleasure. Let us spend a whole night of love, for the man of the house is away. He has gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of silver with him. Until the moon is full, he will not be home. Persuasively, she led him on. She pressed him with seductive words. Like a simple fool, he followed her, like an ox on its way to the slaughterhouse, like an antelope bounding into the noose, like a bird hurrying into the trap. He did not know what he was risking his life, that he was risking his life until the arrow pierced his vitals. But now, my son, listen to me, attend to what I say. Do not let your heart entice you into her ways. Do not stray down her paths. Many has she pierced and laid low, and her victims are without number. Her house is the entrance to Sheol, which leads down to the halls of death.
This one ticks me off
Okay, go ahead.
because it's all her.
Yep.
Hey, wait a minute, it takes two.
Yep.
You know, and men are just as easy to do it too.
Mhm.
So that's why I just,
Why am I thinking of the Song of Solomon as you read this?
Actually, the Song of Solomon's kind of the flip side.
I know, and I'm thinking as much is that's wisdom literature too.
Right. Mm,
It's kind of the same genre.
yeah,
And then just on the other side, like you say.
yeah. Though you're right, and this is, you know, but think about our own culture too. How does she describe this person at first?
I don't understand what you're asking.
The
Describes a young man.
yeah, he's young.
Mhm.
He's kind of stupid. He's being taken advantage of. Except in our culture,
I observed among the youth, a young man without sense.
what about when a female teacher seduces a young male student?
Mhm.
we often cut the young guy slack and don't, put him in prison, though she goes to prison.
Yeah.
And actually, it cuts again the same way
Yeah,
within
yeah,
our culture.
reputation
An
is-
older man gets it even worse, seducing a younger woman. So, I agree with you that it takes two, but here there may be a little different sense in
Well,
that.
I'm
this
looking
is-
just at this one,
Yeah.
not so much anybody else, but just this one, and it's just, wait a minute.
But young or old, the wisdom is, don't do this. It's a bad idea. A really bad idea. So we've had 3 chapters now where this is kind of the central
Yeah.
theme. So it must be important. And maybe, and especially in our world, in our culture, we need to hear this again, because relationships aren't always taken very seriously. We treat them with a certain devil may care sort of attitude that's not life-giving. And one of the truths that we miss is that people get hurt. This is the reality of people truly getting hurt. And we need to take that really seriously, I think, in our life together. And the Bible says you should be able to see this. You should be able to look out into the world and know that this is not a good idea. Yet, I'm not sure we get it. So I think it's powerful for today too. Now we're going to talk about women though, and that we're not talking about, now we are talking about personified women as we move into chapter 8. Hear now wisdom, lift her voice, and understanding cries out. She stands at the crossroads by the wayside, at the top of the hill, beside the gate, at the entrance to the city. At the entrance by the open gate, she calls aloud. Men, it is you I call. I appeal to every man. Understand, you simple fools, what it is to be shrewd. You stupid people, understand what sense means. Listen, for I will speak clearly. You will have plain speech from me, for I speak nothing but truth, and my lips detest wicked talk. All that I say is right. Not a word is twisted or crooked. All is straightforward to him who can understand. All is plain to the man who has knowledge. Accept instruction and not silver, knowledge rather than pure gold, for wisdom is better than red coral. No jewel can match her. I am wisdom. I bestow shrewdness and show the way to knowledge and prudence. Pride, presumption, evil courses, subversive talk, all these I hate. I have force. I also have ability. Understanding and power are mine. Through me, kings are sovereign and governors make just laws. Through me, princes act like princes. From me, all rulers on earth derive their nobility. Those who love me, I love, and those who search for me find me. In my hands are riches and honor, boundless wealth and rewards of virtue. My harvest is better than gold, fine gold, and my revenue better than pure silver. I follow the course of virtue. My path is the path of justice. I endow with riches those who love me, and I will fill their treasuries. The Lord created me, the beginning of his works, before all else that he made long ago. Alone I was fashioned in times long past, at the beginning, long before earth itself. When there was yet no ocean I was born, no springs brimming with water. Before the mountains were settled in their place, long before the hills I was born. When as yet he had made neither land nor lake, nor the first clod of earth. When he set the heavens in their place, I was there. When he girdled the ocean with the horizon, when he fixed the canopy of clouds overhead and set the springs of ocean firm in their place, when he prescribed its limits for the sea and knit together earth's foundation, then I was at his side each day, his darling and delight, playing in his presence continually, playing on earth when he had finished it, while my delight was in mankind. Now, my sons, listen to me. Listen to instruction and grow wise. Do not reject it. Happy is the man who keeps to my ways. Happy the man who listens to me. Watch daily at my threshold with his eyes on the doorway. For he who finds me finds life and wins favor with the Lord, while he who finds me not hurts himself, and all who hate me are in love with death.
So from the dawn of time, from the creation, was wisdom.
Wait,
I have a question for you before we get deeper. You are not reading out of the NRSV, right?
no, I'm reading out of the NIV.
NIV. Where in verse 4, it said men.
Mhm.
It says in here in the NRSV, to you, O people, I
Right.
call.
Right.
That's a significant difference.
Yep, it is.
And this is a later version.
Right.
And for this study, you chose NIV.
Well, I mainly am using it because it's in the commentary that I use it.
Oh, okay.
It's not better or worse, but why would it be that way in the NRSV? Anybody know? Now we're getting into biblical translation again, but we'll shift into that just like it.
More inclusive.
Right. The NRSV has chosen in every place where they feel that they can rightfully translate with a non-gender related word, they will do that. So that's what the NRSV is. Now, it may be appropriate in the NIV, for the NIV to go this way, because Proverbs is mainly using that concept of a father teaching a son. So, there is a sense in which probably you could get away with that. But this really is to all of us saying, pay attention to wisdom. This is a much better direction to go than to go off in foolishness. From the very beginning, what God cherished among everything was wisdom, because that's the first thing God brought in being was wisdom. So you ought to pay attention to it. So what is the nature of wisdom, though? That's what I find most interesting in this particular chapter, is the personification of what wisdom is all about. What are the attributes of wisdom?
Direction.
Direction, okay.
Would only go back every time to that chapter 1.
Fear of the Lord.
Righteousness, justice, and equity.
Right? Righteousness, justice, equity, understanding.
Yeah.
One that particularly caught me, and this is, again, every scripture passage, when we read it, hits us because of our experience, our place, whatever. One of the realities that they talk about here, and I'm trying to find which verse it is, verses 6 and 7. Listen, for I will speak clearly. You will have plain speech for me, for I speak nothing but truth, and my lips detest wicked talk. To me, truth, to try the best we can to speak the truth is something that's really important. And yet I find sometimes as I move through the world today that truth is not something that is particularly held as being really important. If it's convenient, we like to suppress the truth or hide from the truth or, shade the truth in whatever direction makes us feel good, rather than being willing to.
That's what undermines our society.
I think that, but there are other people who, in various ways don't.
There's your truth and my truth.
Yep,
My facts and your facts.
And the truth is that is partially what we run into all the time. To observe something is to, in some ways, create it. I mean, in science, we have what's called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Anybody know what that says in science? It says that by studying something, you alter the reality of it. So every time you study something, you can't study something in its pure nature, that by the very nature of studying it, you alter it. So that
Male
true.
ant,
What?
the male ant.
Yeah. Yeah, you know,
Example.
we come from our own kind of, sort of
Yeah.
understanding of that reality. And so by studying it, so there's all kind, but recently especially, and I just got through dealing with a whole discussion about this reality. They're voting on some bill today in the state, I guess, about not teaching.
Critical.
They don't call it that, but they say not teaching any kind of history that will make people feel bad about themselves or someone else. And I'm looking at it going, but history is history. Shouldn't we teach our children things, even if it might make them uncomfortable? Because if you don't give them the truth, then how do we ever deal with anything? And it's kind of like, oh, that just seems so crazy that don't tell them the truth. If you tell them the truth.
Yeah, but
Destroying
they're
us.
also saying, no, that's not the truth, what you just said. You had separate drinking fountains. That's not true.
Then all
By this generation who was never even there, or what are you talking about?
we got the pictures.
Yeah. But you know what, today, in today's world, look at all the caca that's on the internet. And look at the way the news, this is to the right, this is to the left, and it's talking the same thing.
Yeah. And that's that problem of the minute you study something, you alter it. If you're going to come at it from a specific set of experiences and interpret everything from a particular set of values, then you never really get truth. But I think I agree with Proverbs to the extent that we have to struggle to find the truth. Yes, maybe we do miss on this or miss on that, who knows, but you have to try to understand what the truth is and not run from it because it's inconvenient or it makes you feel uncomfortable or whatever. You have to, you really have to engage it so that it allows you to change yourself and try to change the world. I actually ended up, after this long discussion with people, writing to my congressperson and said, in Germany, they don't run away from the Holocaust. In fact, they look at that hard. And their young people aren't somehow feeling guilty and bad about that. Instead, what they say is, we will never let this happen again.
And there's a way of saying the truth to make someone feel better. To me, what the blacks went through, my goodness, look at the dignity. You made it through. You're, a president, a Supreme Court justice, on and on and on.
And may call us to look at how we still do things and say, we don't want them to be this way because it's not fair, it's not equal, it's not just, it's not right, whatever that happens to be. Whenever we engage these realities, we have to struggle with it, whatever that means in the end, to lead us in new directions. And I was trying to think of I had an example of it the other day. I was thinking of if people hadn't, trying to think how it went. If people hadn't somehow challenged, we have changing understandings of gender now and gender reality. And if somebody hadn't said, we have to think about these things, there would have been no change. You would have just kept going, and that's what we're always about. So to me, that powerful reality of wisdom is about truth. It's about justice. It's about equity. These are the things that are wrapped up in what wisdom is all about. If we're going to be wise, then we have to ask about those things.
To give another example of that, I remember early September, there was I watch channels, WISN 612 on Spectrum. And down in McQuantigo, somebody in the high school, a teacher, had a class go out and and put the names of all the victims of the 9/11 on the lawn, that there was some kind of recognition of that. I thought to myself, I think of Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, with their new museum of all of the hangings of Black slaves and and names. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if we put some of those out in contrast to something like that. But there's no place for that in this state. No, I can't imagine that happening, but why not? It's a reality. And I'm thinking of that in terms of this creative race theories, or what, not
Critical race
theories. It's wrong. I agree with you. It's not
Or
right.
destroying statues of people that led, like generals, early and
Right.
so forth. You know,
Yep.
that's part of history. And
Right.
When I was
Right.
in the Peace Corps, I was in the former Soviet Union after the Iron Curtain came down. And in Lithuania, well, first of all, the Soviets built these huge statues of their Lenin and everybody.
sorry.
In Lithuania, a man went around and told the government, give me that statue, don't destroy it, give it to me. And he made a park of all and now the people can go and review what they were subjected to during Soviet times. And I look at those monuments that they're tearing down, I thought, no, save them, make a museum, and then you can bring your children and say, this is what we had to live through. See?
Right, and that's, and I think a
broke
lot
my
of the
heart.
people who were part of tearing those statues down were certainly willing to leave them up if what we did with them then is put them in the context of what really happened. These are not heroes, because the statues are actually put up usually to commemorate these people as heroes. No, this was not heroic. This was an attempt to stay in an age when people were being brutalized, and you need to know what the context of that is rather than, and so, but nobody wanted to say, okay, let's reset these in a different context. And so then the option only became either tear it down or leave it up.
Tear it down.
Yeah.
Oh, history is
Maybe at
destroyed.
some point they will be put into a museum.
But they were broken.
Some have been stored away though. Some are
I
in
hope so.
storage.
I hope so.
That always made more sense to me too, is take it down, get it out of there, put it in a place where, like Equal Justice Initiative is, get it into a place where all
museum.
things come together, museum.
Yes.
Yep, and put it in its proper context, and that's
Yes.
different than putting it in a city square as a kind of monument to.
Well, yeah, and that happened,
Something like
long
the
ago.
Holocaust
Yep.
Museum,
Yeah,
a pile of hair and.
yeah.
Well, quickly, I want to go through this last part because then we'll be
Okay.
through chapter 9. Again, what we have here as we go into chapter 9 is we just had this great declaration of the importance of wisdom, and now it's contrasted with, the other choice people have, which is, in this translation, they call it wisdom and lady stupidity, or foolishness, or whatever translation language. So wisdom has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. She has killed the beast and spiced her wine, and she has spread her table. She has sent out her maidens to proclaim from the highest part of the town, come in, you simpletons, she says. Also to the fool, come, dine with me. Taste the wine that I have spiced. Cease to be silly, and you will live. You will grow in understanding. Correct an insolent man, and he sneers at you for your pains. Correct a bad man, and you will put yourself in the wrong. Do not correct the insolent, or they will hate you. Correct a wise man, and he will be your friend. Lecture a wise man, and he will grow wiser. Teach a righteous man, and his learning will increase. The first step to wisdom is the fear of the Lord, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So we're back to the center of all this. For through me, your days will be multiplied, and your years will be added to your life. If you are wise, it will be to your advantage. If you are haughty, you alone are to blame. The lady stupidity is a flighty creature. The simpleton, she cares for nothing. She sits at the door of her house on a seat in the highest part of the town to invite the passerby indoors. As they hurry on their way, come in, you simpleton, she says. She says also to the fool, stolen water is sweet, and bread got by stealth tastes good. Little does she know that death lurks there, that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. So, got wisdom over here saying, be true, be wise, be hardworking, be all these other things. But stupidity says, what?
Duh.
Says, don't worry about that, steal it. Get it through dishonesty, do whatever, it's fine. But in the end, at least Proverbs believes that will lead to death,
Destruction, sure.
destruction. You're eventually going to get caught. That's the way the world works.
You not get caught in this world, but in the next world.
Though Proverbs seems to believe the nature of reality is that you'll also get caught here. You can only go so far. And, we have certainly from experience people who go really far. But eventually you find that that's not what anything else fascinate you in this last part, which kind of compares the two? So why do people choose stupidity then?
It's easier.
We like the easy path. That really feels good.
And, and I'm out for myself. I'm going to get what I want. My life,
as fast as
I'm
I
gonna
can.
eat look at the hoarders. Look at toilet paper, for crying out loud. You want to talk about something really stupid?
Yeah, you better go out now and get it again. I see it.
Yes, it's going
It's
back.
going to be flying off the shelves again,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I'll take my chances.
Well, I can see gas, when gas was, and this was sort of like back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
It got a little, with the OPEC and everything.
There's still leaves on the
toilet
trees,
paper?
on you.
That's right.
Yes, or magazines.
I'll find
Yeah, farmers have been doing that for
Just-
years.
I'm just not going to make that the center of my existence.
They had just their carts were filled.
Yeah.
Oh.
How much do you lose? How much do you need?
Well,
There you go.
the low point in human history was that stupid toilet paper. I'm sorry.
But the one thing that I at least struggle with in this particular section is in verses 7 through 9, where it says, correct an insolent man and be sneered at for your pains. Correct a bad man and you will put yourself in the wrong. Do not correct the insolent or they will hate you. Correct a wise person and they will be your friend. Lecture a wise person and they will grow wiser. Teach a righteous person and their learning will increase. I wish I always believed that's true. But there's something in all of us that wants to believe I'm right. They're wrong. And it's hard for us. It is incredibly hard for us to listen to a person who's in a different place and take that into consideration. I mean, this is, to me, that little segment right there in this part about wisdom is the most challenging one of all. How do we open our ears, open our hearts to the possibility that maybe somebody knows more than me?
Isn't that why we're here?
Yeah, I think in part we are, we're trying to open ourselves to this wisdom that comes from the scriptures and stuff, but it's hard.
But as children of God, we're supposed to take the word for word and help other people understand.
But the other side of the coin is always, we're also always supposed to stand for what's right. So everything people tell us isn't necessarily true or wise. And we have to test that for ourselves. And again, remembering Heisenberg's uncertainty principle and all those other things, that's not always easy. We also are caught up in our little blinders that make it hard for us to figure out what is the truth. So I think we always have to leave for ourselves the possibility that we're wrong. We may be wrong.
Isn't that part of wisdom?
It is, but that's
The world isn't flat.
the world that may not be, but maybe, who knows? Maybe all the conspiracy theorists are right and somebody faked all this. I don't believe that, but could it be? I suppose. Could it be that horse tranquilizers are good for treating? I don't think so, and I don't want to believe that, but there are people who are saying that, how one of the challenges that this book is not going to give you the answer to is, how do we measure wisdom?
Well, one of the things here, just in this 7 to 9, you don't want to go through your life looking to see if I need to say something to somebody. I think you're a scoffer. Okay. And you're wicked. Whoa. But if so you have dialogues and you have listening, and
Research.
this is a little bit harsh.
Black and white.
Maybe it's like the conversation you had earlier about critical race theory. You have to have that honest discussion and then examine ourselves to see if this is truly what we believe and be willing to change if we need to.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the center of what's being said there, that true wisdom is willing to listen and is willing to evaluate itself and willing to sometimes say, well, I was wrong. Maybe it's time to turn around,
Some of the problem, big problem, I suppose for me anyways, is that going back to the ant, all right? So now science is, these are all males. When this was written, that wasn't known. So you make some adjustment there. We make the adjustment. Well, I was brought up in the Missouri Senate, and there was no adjustments made. The word was the word, and that was absolutely it. So afterwards, when you find out there are some adjustments to be made, the problem becomes, where do you stop?
And that's always the risk. The minute we allow ourselves to say, well, maybe things could be different, then we do risk, being further and further. But I guess the one reason I'm not afraid of it, and this is again just how I live in the reality I live in, is because I live in a relationship with God. And relationships are never about a set of facts or a set of realities that, we're always in relationship, kind of flowing in new ways. And yes, there's a risk that you're going to go down a wrong path, but as long as the relationship stands, I can always turn around and go back. So I'm not really afraid. I don't live in fear of it. Yeah, I know that you could end up going down some blind alleys, and I think the church has in its life gone down some blind alleys that they needed to turn around and go back. But so what? So we make a mistake. God still loves us. We can go back. We can try something different, you know. So to be open to the possibility is just not as scary to me, I guess, as it is for some people. And I understand that well, if we question one thing, we're going to end up questioning it all. But if I believe that God will embrace me and love me anyway, you know, even when I go the wrong way, then it's not something I really get really overly nervous about, I guess. So I make a mistake.
You hide your nervousness, David. You're always cool to me. I mean, you're just a cool guy.
Yeah.
You know how to handle things.
Not always, no.
Well, I think you have great listening skills. You know, you don't reject anybody. You listen. You may not agree, and you have a wonderful way of putting disagreement. You know how to accept and at the same time affirm who you are as you listen to another.
Well, and I think that's what Proverbs really calls us to, are to be people who know who we are ultimately, but realize that other people are different than we are. That's okay, you know, but to be able to listen, to talk, to defend who you are. I mean, that whole segment about if you've gotten into this bad deal, then go and don't just sit there, do something about it. You know, you have to stand up for your own reality, but you have to realize that people live in other realities too. And
you're not going to be right. It might not be wrong.
Yeah.
By the way, have a good month.
Thank you.
What is October the time for your, it's not the Synod stuff?
Yeah, that's the Synod
Okay.
stuff. So this month, what I'll be working on is our Synod anti-racism team has asked me to kind of spearhead doing an analysis of the Synod. So that's kind of what I'm working on through October. Is I'm already starting to gather some factual data about congregations, at least as they report their own realities around racial diversity, to compare that maybe with census data for their area. So your congregation may be 1% people of color, but the area you're living is 10% people of color. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong, but it means that that's certainly a reality. Then again, you have to ask the question, why is it that we are at 1%? Well, the communities is at 10%. That's part of what we have to ask ourselves as a Synod is why do in some place, and why are one of the things that has really amazed me in the early stage, because I at one level knew it was true, but it didn't hit me as hard as when I actually look at the figures. Our most racially diverse congregations or congregations where largely percentile wise they are people of color, those are our most vulnerable congregations. And what do we then do as a Synod when we realize the most vulnerable congregations we have, the ones who are on the edge financially for their resources, are the ones who also offer us the greatest insights that come from other people? Shouldn't we be doing something to then to help those congregations, to keep those congregations functioning in a lot, because they are a valuable resource for us. So there are a lot of interesting questions, no easy answers, but again, I think anytime you work to reach some new places, you first of all have to start by asking, well, what's the situation as it is? And then you can make a decision. We're going to do nothing. We're going to do something different. We're going to, take it on the program.
Lutheran World Hunger, because they've changed from food to helping congregations. So take a look at them. What are they offering? Are there grants? Are there? And if not, why not?
Yeah, and those are all questions I think ultimately we have to ask, but it always starts with knowing, where are we?
Yeah.
Another news item I saw out of Milwaukee yesterday. On Sunday, there was the first meeting of a church called, it was either Inclusive Church or Diverse Church. And they were planning when the pandemic hit. So it didn't happen. But now there's a group meeting and there are different races. and ethnic groups. And it didn't look like a large group of people, and I don't know any more than basically what I saw. Did anybody else see it?
Nice structure, though. That there, the church
Yeah.
was pretty nice.
Yeah, the church, the building looked, you saw it too, didn't you?
Isn't that where there's a black pastor and a white pastor?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That was another feature of it, a black pastor and a white pastor.
And that may be a good model for lots of people to look at as a possibility for the future.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you all. We'll see you in November and we'll pick it up at chapter 10.
Thank you.